Welcome to Gadget Cast. I'm Anthony, and I'm on with Kyle, and this is the post Loki premiere episode edition.
Yes. Our review of, impressions of the show. You literally just watched it.
Yes, I did. What did you think about the show?
I loved it personally. I thought it was great. They they jumped right in right where it left off, like right in Endgame.
Right.
And it had tons of Easter eggs. Personally, I thought it was just a lot of the stuff that they had in it was cool because it was stuff I'd seen before in the comics. The Time Variance Authority, Mobius.
Right.
I was kind of we can get to that. I'm hoping for eventually a reference to the Living Tribunal.
Right.
Show, but
most folks wouldn't who aren't into Marvel comics would know who that is. So you'll have to post a link maybe on the Marvel wiki or something like that.
Well, yeah, we will. We'll post a link.
Okay.
But yeah, the Living Tribunal is a character in the Marvel universe that is represented by three faces, and his function is to safeguard the multiverse. So it's very similar to the
timekeepers. Yeah.
So I'm hoping they showed like the three faces behind them, which kind of hinted at the Living Tribunal, but I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah.
What did you think?
It's tough, man. I don't like the character of Loki anyway, because from the first film he was portrayed as a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard for me to, root for him, even with the good things that Loki has done in the films or whatever. I still don't see him as this altruistic character. Now, maybe this show will do a good job of redeeming him, especially and for anyone who hasn't watched the episode, just be forewarned, there's going to be some spoilers. So if you haven't watched it, you might want to stop watching now, come back after you've watched.
Yes.
But after he watched the the end of his file and he saw how he died at the hands of Thanos, they did open up the opportunity for him to redeem himself. Well, but the big question that I had though after watching this is how are they going to explain then this next Spider-Man movie?
Mm-hmm.
And how is everything that has been released so far about this movie is about the big multiverse component of this, and then the next Doctor Strange movie is named Doctor Strange in the
Multiverse of Madness,
right? So I had a hard time understanding how you have this TVA that is against the multiverse, and here we are. Right. These Marvel movies are talking about multiverses.
Well, so they haven't explained it yet. It's
no.
The way I see it personally is that the way that they explained it is that the natural order of things would be for a multiverse to develop, and that through their curation, they created what they call the sacred timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were to step away and just let things proceed, the normal outcome would be a multiverse. Like everyone's decision would branch off and, become like all this variance would become the norm, which is what they said in the beginning, that's what happened. And then there was a war between multiverses and
right.
But which it seems like that's kind of like the normal state.
Well, again, there's a lot that wasn't explained. The one example that they used was that, hey, if I decide not to go to work or something like that, and that creates a divergent timeline or a multiverse, how does that work? So my regular self is at work working, and then the divergent one is out playing hooky.
Yeah,
like
there's a separate multi. So this is actually a theory in physics too, that every decision we make leads to that. There's an idea that there's a theory that there is like an infinite number of multiverses. That every decision you make is a branch, and that there is a universe where if you get up in the morning, you go outside and you turn right. There exists a universe in which you got up in the morning, went outside, and turned left. It's
I just had a hard time with that it being that easy. And then how do multiverses, is it where now this multiverse is going to wipe out the other multiverse? Is it people from one there wasn't a lot of explanation on how this is bad.
right.
I wish they would have talked about that. And then again, so from what I'm understanding what you're saying with this sacred timeline, is that the elimination of these multiverses verses and the variants, or is that they, as long as they're in order, they're okay with that?
No, that's what they said in the episode, that they basically go through and they will trim variants, and that's what they did in that one. The first, they didn't show it, but they showed them setting off that device that's supposed to like basically destroy that universe, I guess, that timeline.
Yeah, see that's where I have a hard time, and I hope they explain it by the end of the series, but I just don't see how this ties in with these other movies that are coming out.
Picture this. Just let me throw this out here then. So the whole purpose of the TVA is to prevent the creation of multiverses by curating this sacred timeline, right? So let's say by the end of this series, Loki destroys the TVA. Then leading right into Spider-Man and right into Doctor Strange, there's no TVA. What's going to happen? Multiverse of madness.
Well, again, if the Living Tribunal, or the supposed, the timekeepers, if they represent the Living Tribunal, I'm sorry, Loki cannot overpower the Living Tribunal.
No, he doesn't need
so
to.
so
He's Loki.
like
he tricks him.
Well, we'll see. I just to me it brought up so many questions, man, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like and then like to me that doesn't redeem the character. That goes against the redemption storyline that they've set up.
I don't know that. So I thought it was interesting. It's something that Owen Wilson said in the episode when he was talking to Loki. He said Loki was talking about his grand purpose, what was it? Glorious purpose. And he said, well, no, your purpose is to make other people the best versions of themselves.
Right.
Like that's his thing. Like his whole thing isn't about him being a good person, because he's not. He's Loki.
Right.
But his thing is about like other people. He's the foil against which other people become the best versions of themselves. But through this, and this is just me, I'm spitballing here personally, but I think it's pretty obvious, the other version of Loki is going to be the foil that this variant of Loki then becomes his best self against. So it's like, he's going to become both the protagonist and antagonist of the same story. And I'm willing to bet that when they finally show it, it's going to be the female Loki who's the one that they're hunting.
We'll see. The one thing that I've heard about in discussions of this show was that the villain that they were going to introduce was Kang.
Who?
Kang the Conqueror.
Oh, Kang.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were going to do it in this show or not, but I mean, that's the whole thing. Kang is eventually an employee of the TVA. I mean, when he finally becomes Immortus, Immortus is tasked by the TVA to be responsible for this part of time, apparently between like 3000 BC and 4000, something like that. Like that's Immortus's, beat.
So I, we'll see. It could be the female Loki, which I didn't really care for the female Loki in the comics. And yes, that could be what they're doing. I did find it odd if it was this Loki that they didn't show the face at the end of the episode.
Right.
Well,
I think it's interesting just because it is a particular thing in mythology where Loki is actually non-binary gender-wise in mythology, because he's a man, but at the same time Loki is also portrayed in stories as a female giving birth. Like Loki, like Hela in that they had in Ragnarok, that's not Loki's sister. In mythology, that's Loki's daughter. And not only is that Loki's daughter, Loki gave birth to her. So it's like Loki's gender is one of those things that even in mythology goes back and forth, you know. So it's kind of, I thought it was neat when they did it in the comics, just to introduce that aspect of the character from mythology. But yeah, what they did with it in the comics was, you know, a little, I don't even remember what they did with it, honestly.
I don't remember what happened to her, but that Loki, like, you know, the Loki in the comic books is nothing like the Loki in the films.
Right.
The Loki in the comics didn't have any what you could call redeeming qualities.
Well, they have different versions of the character, right? And they have some that are super evil, like the original Avengers were created fighting Loki.
Right.
But then after the whole female story, they had a period where Loki was like young again. And he decided he didn't want to be the god of mischief anymore. He tried to be good. And so it was this whole thing where he actually did, because like that version of Loki ended up sacrificing himself.
Okay. See, I didn't see those. I didn't see those comics. But yeah, that goes against the historical nature. I mean, we're talking about over 40 years of comic history of this character being the bad guy.
Right.
You know, whereas this storyline, you know, that may have been in the last 10 years, maybe. So yeah, I just think that
to be a good guy though. That's the whole thing. Like he's
Loki.
He's Loki. I mean, he might be the protagonist of the show, but I don't think he's a good guy.
Well, no, listen, I'm not trying to say he's a good guy, but the Loki that we saw in Avengers, which one was it? Infinity War.
The one who died.
That died. You know, I don't see that being the same Loki as in the first Thor movie or the first Avengers movie.
Well, so they kind of, it's interesting. They show that arc, and I thought it was interesting. They did it all in the first episode, right? Is that they actually have him live out that timeline in that episode, watching it, like you said, on the screen, and he sees himself like cause his own mother's death,
right?
You know, get betrayed himself. Like he like goes through the whole emotional arc that he goes through in the movies, but he does it in that first episode.
Right.
And you even see the moment, like I thought it was really good acting on Tom Hiddleston's part personally, where you see that moment in his face where when he sees himself die, or actually, I think it was also when his father dies. They have like those moments, you know, where I mean, I don't think that Loki. So you're right in that the Loki from the original Avengers is a completely different character than the Loki from Ragnarok. Totally different, but it's supposed to be the same person who's just gone through. It's the funny part to me though, is it is interesting. It's supposed to be a 2,000-year-old person, but like, man, he's gone through a lot of change these last 3 years or 10 years, whatever. So it's like for 2,000 years, he's pretty much the same guy, but man, these last 10 years.
Well, I mean, again,
real growth.
it was those traumatic experiences that made him grow. But yeah, even with that, I wouldn't say he's you know, he's not a superhero in the vein of Thor or Captain America or Marvel, but he was more than just the villain or bad guy. You could say he was an anti-hero or something like that. I'm willing to go that far, that he just wouldn't, you know, leave his brother to die and say, hey, Thanos, here you go, let me join your crew, etc. So maybe this show, the series can tie in, you know, how he evolved like that and whatever, and maybe we'll see more of him and that he won't be wiped out. I'm right now, I'm not convinced that this character that we see going through these different points in time is the female Loki. I have to see more.
Yeah. I don't. It was just the last scene of the hooded figure at the end.
Right.
I thought that was, if they, I don't know, we'll see. It feels like they're setting it up for a reveal, and that feels like probably the biggest impact they could get for a reveal.
Yeah,
would be to have like a gender bended Loki.
I hear you. I mean, most of the Marvel fans that have read the comics, they probably would be less surprised by it, as less so than those that don't read the comics and just watch the movies.
Yeah, it's mostly going to surprise the people who don't read the comics. Yeah,
right, correct.
I mean, they could even do like a young Loki, and that would still be comics. People would still be like, "Oh, okay, that Loki."
Yep.
There's so many versions of him.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope he doesn't destroy the TVA. Because that, to me, as I said before, I didn't really care for the character that much. But if he destroys the TVA, then he's dead to me.
Well, no, because here's the whole thing. Like, his whole shtick is that he believes in free will and destiny. He thinks that he is destined for a glorious purpose, right? And he thinks that he's going to go out there and forge his own destiny. So for him to learn about the TVA, it's like he's learning that free will doesn't exist.
But
his decisions were decisions that were allowed to happen because they had.
But I disagree with that. Loki believes in free will for himself. In the first Avengers movie, he stated that free will, you guys didn't need, free will.
Right. Well, that's what, Owen Wilson says that to him when he shows him that scene when they're going over it. And he's like, oh, you're not. So you're not, bound by that. You're different.
Well, and Loki, that's what I'm saying. He believes different. It's one of those things where, do as I say, not as I do.
Oh, absolutely.
The rules that I'm putting towards you don't apply towards me.
Right. And I think that's why he would do it, right? Like, he would take down the TVA because he sees them as a threat to his own personal rise, to his,
Well, again, if he does, I'd be more forgiving if it was accidental. If he did something that, he doesn't realize the impact of it, or hey, don't pull this lever and that's the self-destruct. If he does something like that,
that's his thing, right? He's the god of mischief, right? Like, I mean, which is funny because, like, even through the whole of Ragnarok, right, which was supposed to be his character's redemption, right? Like, you talk about redeeming arc of his character. Ragnarok was supposed to be Loki's redemption, but then you see in the very beginning of Infinity War, it's like, no, I really did steal the cosmic cube. Like, he's like, no, he's still, even when he was in the middle of his redemption arc, right, and he was like getting the crown from Asgard, he stopped and caused mischief. Which, because he stopped and grabbed that, Thanos, that's why Thanos came to them.
Well, but we don't know if the destruction of Asgard would have destroyed the Tesseract anyway.
Right. I mean, but if it probably wouldn't have.
Right.
But it would have been floating around in space somewhere after Asgard was destroyed if Loki hadn't grabbed it.
Right, but
that's the whole thing. Like, Loki's mischief always causes like other people to get hurt usually. So I fully expect that he's going to do something in this that's going to, he's going to just be Loki, and like you said, like, there'll be a big red button, that'll have a big label on it that says "Do not push," and Loki's going to go bam. Yeah, it'll set up, Spider-Man and Doctor Strange.
Wow.
And personally, that's the whole thing I think is interesting, is that it's touched on in WandaVision, right? Like, when they introduce the other Pietro, Wanda is a Nexus being, right? Like, and that's the whole thing with, or I think it's going to be Multiverse of Madness, how she comes into it, because she's the Nexus of the multiverse. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up following through with, that's the way that they bring mutants and stuff into the Marvel universe.
Listen, that Doctor Strange movie is not supposed to come out until this upcoming March, so that's a long time.
When does the Spider-Man Far From Home come out? That comes out first.
Yep. When does that one come out? That comes out no, it can't be July 2nd. No,
It's pretty well, no, that would be Black Widow.
No, it's not Far From Home. Spider-Man No Way Home.
That was it.
Yeah. So that comes out July 16th. So right, that's
really,
let's July 16th. Another month.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. I mean, supposedly the villain in that is going to be Norman Osborn, like the one from the original Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Like that version of the Goblin is supposed to be the villain in this.
Listen, who played them?
Man,
it was the guy that played on Dennis. Well, it wasn't Dennis Leary, was it?
No, it was not Dennis Leary.
What's his name?
Whoops. It would help if I could spell Spider-Man. Man. Huh.
Because he was pretty good. I did like, that Norman Osborn.
It was William Dafoe. That's it.
William Dafoe. Yep. Yeah, that was a pretty good so it's supposed to be him. Now dude, he's got to be 60 something.
I don't know how that,
He's got to be
they're supposed to be bringing like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back to but I mean, Tobey Maguire, like he's got to be like in his 40s now, like like old Peter.
Yes. Well, listen, you know what? If you watch the Miles Morales movie, that was pretty good. And if he plays a Peter Parker like that, I can appreciate that.
Yeah, the loser Peter.
Hey, he's been through some hard times, man.
He was. I mean, that's a rough.
Right. If you think about everything that. Because what a lot of people who don't read the comics don't understand is that these characters have been around for 60 plus years. The Marvel ones, Superman has been around a lot longer, but you think about, he was a teenager and then he grew up, he got married, etc. And what they've done a lot of times is they reset. So basically it's almost like, hey, you are just starting out again, even though we've been reading it for 20 years. Well, it's like it's back to issue 0,
right? I mean, they do that with a lot of them. They do that with Superman. It's kind of like it's almost like the anchor characters of a story. Like Superman, they keep rebooting him,
right?
Spider-Man, they kind of keep rebooting him, but like other characters don't quite get rebooted as much. They might get like different origin stories told, but I mean, the Hulk is generally the Hulk. It's been told different ways,
Yeah. They've had little tweaks to their origins of stories, and they've had like their series relaunch. But yes, they're not starting back from scratch. Spider-Man has done that.
Started over, right? Like Superman, it was the same thing with Superman. Grew older, got married to Lois, had kids, and then they reset him for a new generation. It's the same thing with Spider-Man. He got married, had kids. They wrote stories about it. They got bored with it. They reset him.
Well, right. I mean, but you think about how he was a teenager. He was bullied. He's got his aunt that's his care giver or his guardian, and she dies, and all of the different traumatic experiences he's had, is his identity being unmasked and everything. So you could almost say he was jaded. So if this Spider-Man, where instead of being reset, he's actually, had that trauma and those experiences. Yes, he's not going to be that bright-eyed Spider-Man
Right.
of his youth, he's gonna be that guy that, man, if I save you, okay, I'll try to save you. But hey, you the one that stepped off that building.
Right.
Like, oh, I missed him.
He's the one who like steals the doohickey from Miles Morales and says, "Good, I got to get home."
Yeah. So I we'll see where this series goes, where this Loki does with the multiverse.
Okay.
But yes, I didn't realize that Spider-Man was that soon to be released. So I think in that regards, because I don't expect that this series will last more than 10 episodes, right?
No, in fact, if it's coming out that soon, then I don't think Loki will even be over by the time that comes out.
Well, how many episodes is it supposed to be?
I want to say it's 6 episodes. So that should put us at, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it'd be right around the same time it comes out.
Yeah, let's see. I'm not seeing it says it's a 6-part series.
Okay. Yeah.
So this first episode came out yesterday.
Wednesday. They're coming out on Wednesdays.
Okay. Yeah. That 6th episode will be the Friday of Spider-Man coming out.
Right. So so they're not releasing these on Fridays though.
So if it's Wednesday, then it will come out.
It'll come out before then, like right before.
Right. So
that actually might be great timing. Like if they actually do some huge reveal at the end, and then literally 2 days later, you get the Spider-Man movie that picks up from that.
That will be great. That will be great, and it's one of those things that I was hoping that Disney would do with these series, since you're not doing them constantly.
Right.
But then again, like what are they going to do after Loki?
They have like a whole slate of stuff, but yeah, I mean, but Marvel MCU,
exactly.
I mean, it's going to be Black Widow after this, but that's kind of.
Oh, well, Black Widow comes out July 9th, the week before Spider-Man, which, and I know it's been delayed. Right. So it was supposed to come out this past pandemic year.
Right.
So we'll see.
Then the Eternals comes out later this year.
Yeah.
Like
that
November.
Comes out later this year.
Yeah. So I think that's gonna add a lot more to the universe. Oh, and then Shang-Chi.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
Oh, I can't either. That looks really good.
Listen,
I can't personally. I don't know. Did you ever watch Kim's Convenience?
No.
Okay, I highly recommend it. Especially if you like sitcoms and stuff. It's on Netflix. Kim's Convenience. It's really good. It was a Canadian sitcom about this, Korean family runs a convenience store in Canada. But he plays the son on it. And the funny part was, it's like, I watched him in that whole series, right? And I never had any idea he was a martial artist. And then I watched him like doing they had a video they released of him like practicing for Shang-Chi. I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea.
So he knew the martial arts before he got the role.
Yeah. He had to have. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm excited about it. I'm a big martial arts movie fan.
Yeah.
And this character, I read some commentary on it, and they were saying, because this is the Asian equivalent of a black exploitation character.
Right.
There was a lot of controversy around how Asians were portrayed in comics and movies back in the day.
Right.
My thing with Shang-Chi, he's a big part of the MCU. And I think this movie is trying to, even though the character's origin comes from, and I don't know if there's a name for Asian exploitation or whatever, like black exploitation, but they're trying to honor Asian culture, I think, with this movie and this character or whatever. But there's a lot of scrutiny around this movie or whatever, because a few Asians, in their remarks have some trepidation about this movie and this character, just
it's a
because
really
of who
thorny political thing too, right? Like they want to do right by Asian Americans, right? And they want to do this, so they will try to do right by, but they also want the Chinese market for their movies.
Right.
The problem is when the Chinese government doesn't like what the Asian American creator might have created, and they're like, we don't like your portrayal. From what I've heard, actually, there's already been some like harsh criticisms of the trailer from China.
Well, listen, and we're gonna have to do an episode devoted entirely to things of China and these economics and cultural, etc. Anyone that's listening to this podcast, watch out for China. And the Napoleon quote about sleeping China, I think, is very apropos. In these years to come.
Well, I have nothing against China.
No, I don't have anything against China either.
There is a reality to the fact that their economy's on the rise and their market is growing, and they have a more it's one of those things. They managed to raise the lifestyle of a lot of their people to the point that now they have a market that's larger than the US market.
Oh, right. I mean,
it's driving a lot of the entertainment we see now.
Right. Look at the number of cities that they have with 1 million plus people.
Right.
You can say what you want to about LA and New York City itself. China blows that out of the water.
Oh yeah.
Chicago.
There are cities in China that we don't even know the names of.
Right. And they're easily besting all of those cities.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with
it will.
These movies with what was originally American content, but it's like you said, like I think Disney's trying to do right by a lot of these characters that were originally done. There were some characters that were pretty obviously like black exploitation or Asian exploitation, that kind of thing. But at the same time, there were people like Stan Lee, who I think sincerely wanted to have more representation in comics, but he was like way ahead of his time. So, it was one of those things where he tried his best, but at the end of the day, he was still a white dude. And really what they should have done is gone out and found some black creators or some, other creators.
Right. I mean, yes, there's a lot to be said about that. But again, you got to think about the situation that they were in too. If they wanted to go out and hire black creators in the 60s,
right?
Were there how many were there?
Right.
How many black men were actually drawing comics
right
in the 60s?
Yeah.
Now, and I'm not saying that there weren't any, but
there wasn't anything on the level of like Black Sands Entertainment back then.
Right. And the same thing with Asian artists. Hey, I'm looking for Asian comic book writer or character, illustrator. That's a hard ask when a lot of people, wouldn't even see that, those jobs as being anything worth filling.
Well, and especially back then too, comics have been a thing in Japan. Manga is, basically cartoons, comic books, but they were always for an adult market. So like you're to go try to get like a Japanese person in the 60s to write comics, they wouldn't have really been kid friendly, probably.
They wouldn't have been kid friendly. And then you look at manga illustrations compared to, American illustrations even in the 80s or 90s. I mean, now a lot of, during the last 20 years or so, they have gotten a little bit more expressive and big eyes and etc. like some mangas. But I don't know if those illustrators would have had a big success over here back when I was coming up in say high school and the comics that I wanted to look at. I didn't want to see those mangas, and like the mouth is big.
It
as
was
your
a
head.
style. I
Right.
watched some of it. I was
I watched
very
it on
big into like
TV.
Godzilla when I was growing up, so I was a little bit.
Well, listen, I watched Robotech as well, but
Exactly.
Again, Robotech, the action in Robotech made me a little bit more forgiving of some of the silliness that manga has in it.
Oh,
you know, I didn't read the Avengers for silliness. I didn't read, the X-Men for silliness.
Yeah, that's what Deadpool is for.
Yeah, and I can't stand Deadpool.
And Spider-Man, honestly. That's kind of what Spider-Man was for. But, all right, I think we're at this is like 45 minutes, I think.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this is a good one.
All right.
So
what did you rate the episode?
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because I thought they did a really good job doing the whole emotional arc in one episode.
Okay. All right. I'll give it a 2.5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Just because your personal dislike of Loki himself?
It left me with a lot more questions than anything else. I need to see more.
Well, I think that's the mark of a good pilot. It left you with questions.
Yeah, no. I'm giving it 2.5.
All right, so that's good. Well, we'll talk more after we see another episode.
Okay.
All right, man.
Yep.
Bye. All right. Bye.
This is Intellicide signing off.